fictional art for entertainment.
Usually when we talk about a diagnostic test, whether it's for like a massive piece of industrial machinery or a medical diagnosis for a human being, there is this overarching expectation of binary precision.
Right, yeah. Like, it's either broken or it's not.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like looking at a fractured bone on an X-ray. The doctor points at that jagged white line on the screen and says, there it is, that's the exact problem. And then they cast it. Simple.
Yeah, because we naturally crave that kind of clean, comforting division. Like, the machine is either functioning within its acceptable mathematical parameters or it's broken.
Right.
The bone is intact or it's fractured.
Yeah.
It's just a very safe, predictable way to interact with the world around us.
But what happens when that clean division completely falls apart? What happens when you step into the world of human neurodevelopment?
Oh, man. Yeah.
Right? Like the meshing, chaotic, beautiful reality of how a human brain works. And then you forcefully integrate it with advanced, rigid, neural implant artificial intelligence.
It's a complete clash.
It totally is. Suddenly, that X-ray machine doesn't just look broken. It looks like it's speaking a language we don't even understand. We aren't looking at a clear fracture anymore.
No, we're looking at a diagnostic landscape where the line between a glitch and a feature doesn't just blur, it completely devolves.
Exactly. And navigating that exact collision, between perfect machine logic and messy human intuition, that is our mission for today. So welcome, everyone, to another session of Ambassador Alex's book club.
Welcome, everyone.
If you're joining us for the first time, or if you're a longtime member of the club, we are thrilled to have you here with us. We are two passionate book club members, and today we're going to be reviewing, analyzing, and really tearing into the latest audio podcast chapters of the ongoing story of Ambassador Alex.
Yeah, and we have some incredibly dense, conceptually rich source material to get through today. And as we dive into this, we really want you, the listener, to feel like you're sitting right here at the table with us, exploring the mechanics of this universe.
Absolutely. So let's establish our analytical lenses for today's session. As always, my primary focus in the book club is going to be tracking the deeply personal, psychological, and biological character development of our protagonist, Alex Green. And, of course, I am keeping a very watchful eye out for any hints, whispers, or, upcoming appearances of Lady Linda in the broader universe.
Naturally. You always do.
I know she's out there, and I am determined to find the connective tissue between her trajectory and Alex's.
Well, and my focus, as is tradition, will be on the macro-level systems. I'm tracking the technological and AI evolution within the story.
The big picture stuff.
Exactly. And today, that means we are looking at the highly anticipated absolute game changer that is the debut of the AI entity known as Echo.
So huge.
It is. I'll also be scanning the text for any subtle clues regarding Zeutz's role in the overarching universe, particularly how these massive leaps in neural interface technology might attract some very powerful, very unwanted attention.
Oh yeah, we are definitely getting into that. Before we jump in, just a bit of quick housekeeping. Remember that the Ambassador Alex story posts new installments every single Monday at 7:00 p.m.
Every Monday.
Yep. And if you enjoy our deep dives, please support the project by leaving a thumbs up or a thumbs down for this review. It really helps us out.
It does. And we also want to encourage you to explore the channel's other areas beyond just this story.
Oh, the playlists.
Yes. The custom music and art playlists designed for viewing and listening within their world. They have these unique music mixes featuring original creations that blend Celtic, Latin, folk, jazz, and blues.
They are so good for just putting on in the background while you work or read. So immersive. Just check out the description of our podcast for more details and, ask you to subscribe to show your support.
Definitely do that.
Okay, let's jump right into the text. We are analyzing a sequence of events across 3 recent excerpts. We have Excerpt 05 titled Alex Green Feel the Flow, Excerpt 06 Alex Green Doing Things My Own Way, and Excerpt 07, Technical Bottleneck.
Such good titles.
Right, and I'm just going to tease this. Right now, there is a massive aha moment at the end of these chapters regarding a literal breakthrough in human-AI symbiosis.
It completely changes the entire foundation of this fiction.
It really does. But to truly understand the weight of that breakthrough, we have to start by examining the status quo.
Right. We're reintroduced to Alex Green in his capacity as a B1 technician. and he's operating with a piece of hardware called an ARIA 47's implant.
Right, the implant.
Yeah, and this implant is crucial to understand because it drastically enhances his learning abilities. Like, it allows him to easily digest, comprehend, and retain massive technical manuals for his upcoming assignment.
Which is, what, 2 months away?
2 months away, exactly. At Sector 438, which is a machine meteor colloquially known as the Pebble.
Let's just pause and picture this opening scene, though, because the world building is so subtle but so effective. He's going through his morning routine. The text says he's drinking a chocolate coffee and eating a standard issue food pack while digesting these dense technical manuals.
Chocolate coffee.
Right. That little detail, the chocolate coffee, it really grounds the science fiction, right? It's this blend of the mundane, standard issue, corporate existence, spiced with this tiny, relatable luxury.
Yeah, it's very humanizing.
But what really stands out is his internal monologue. He notes that this is the first time in his life he is actually experiencing the fun of learning.
Wow.
Because previously, reading these kinds of manuals left him completely mentally exhausted.
Right, which establishes that the ARIA 47's implant is, at this point, functioning exactly as a medical intervention should. It's bridging a cognitive gap.
Yeah, it's doing its job.
But that state of flow is immediately shattered by the inciting incident. His focus is broken by a ping from the ARIA AI.
Of course it is.
The system claims that Unit 74Z, which is described as an older Series 4 droid with a faceplate that looks like a vintage radiator.
I love that description so much. The vintage radiator.
Oh, wait, me too. Well, ARIA says it's reporting severely low performance parameters, and ARIA's diagnostic is absolute. She states it's a corrupted logic gate. She mandates a remote rewrite of the droid software, and she points Alex to manual CE for the authorization sequence.
Okay, wait, let me stop you right there, because before we get into Alex's reaction, I really want to understand what Arya is actually diagnosing.
Sure.
What exactly does she mean by a corrupted logic gate in this context? Like, why is her immediate response to just wipe it and rewrite it remotely?
That's a really great question, because it gets to the heart of how rigid AI systems function. At the most fundamental level of computing, a logic gate is a physical or virtual structure that takes binary inputs.
Like ones and zeros.
Exactly. Ones and zeros, true or false. And it produces a single output based on a specific rule. You have AND gates, OR gates, NOT gates.
Right.
So, for example, an AND gate only outputs true if both input A and input B are true. In complex AI, millions of these gates form the decision-making pathways. So when Arya says a gate is corrupted, she means the droid's behavioral output no longer matches the expected mathematical input. The droid is doing something that breaks the rules of its programming structure.
Oh, I see.
And for an AI like Arya, a broken rule is a fatal error. You don't try to understand the error, you just format the drive and reinstall the clean baseline code. It's the ultimate top-down approach.
I have to admit, playing devil's advocate here, I am kind of on Arya's side initially.
Really?
Yeah. Like, if I am the corporate entity running a massive, delicate space station with complex agricultural biomes, I want my AI following strict protocols.
Well, sure.
If a heavy-duty agricultural droid starts behaving erratically and ignoring its daily tasks, I don't want a technician relying on, like, vibes to figure it out.
Good point.
Right. I want that machine remotely shut down and rebooted before it accidentally drives through a pressurized hull.
And that is exactly the corporate logic that designed Arya. But this is where the author brilliantly introduces the concept of contextual blindness in machine learning.
Contextual blindness.
Yeah. Arya is suffering from what data scientists today would call an overfitted model. She is so perfectly tuned to expect a very specific set of parameters for a working farm droid that she is completely blind to any context outside of that narrow data set.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so if the data doesn't fit the model, the data is deemed corrupt.
Which brings us to the absolute core of Alex's character. He receives this command to remotely wipe the droid. He stands up, stretches, and explicitly thinks to himself, manuals are just suggestions for people who can't see the flow.
I love that line.
It's so good. He flat out refuses to do the remote rewrite. He overrides the AI's recommendation and tells Arya they're going to physically walk down to the sector to see 74Z in person.
Yes. And when he gets to the sector, which is this massive greenhouse dome, he completely ignores the supposedly broken robot at first.
He doesn't even look at it.
No. Instead, his mind latches onto the environment. The text explicitly identifies him as having high-functioning autism, and we see him use this neurodivergence not as, like, a quirk, but as a highly specialized sensory tool.
He's hyper-focusing.
He is. He engages in intense, hyper-focused environmental observation.
The way this is described is just fascinating. He observes that the silicon ferns are drooping slightly, and the lunar lilies have these very faint yellow tints on their edges that aren't part of their genetic design.
It's incredibly minute detail.
Exactly. But when he questions Arya about this, her response is maddening. She states, data indicates no issue. The moisture sensors and nutrient levels are within the 70th percentile.
This is the perfect illustration of what we just discussed regarding
Okay.
top-down versus bottom-up processing.
Okay, break that down for me.
So Arya uses top-down processing. She looks at the macro-level sensors, like the moisture probes in the soil, sees that the number is 70, compares it to her acceptable range of 60 to 80, and declares the system healthy.
She's just looking at the spreadsheet.
Right. She applies a pre-existing concept to the situation.
Oh.
Alex, however, uses bottom-up processing, which is very common in autistic neurology.
Building from the details.
Yes. He takes in the raw sensory details first, the exact shade of yellow on a specific leaf, the angle of the drooping stem, and he builds his conclusion from the ground up, entirely bypassing the macro-level sensors.
So Alex is using physical, tactile observation. He slows his breathing and decides to, as he says, feel the room. He takes in the air quality, the angle of the grow lights, the ambient humidity on his skin. And in doing so, what does he find? He notices faint, repetitive scuff marks on the floor tiles.
And even when he explicitly points these marks out to his implant, Arya's rigid statistical logic pushes back immediately.
Oh, she fights him on it.
She really does. She claims the marks are statistically insignificant anomalies. She insists that Unit 74Z is the core issue, noting that it needs reprogramming every 3 months and is already marked for decommissioning.
She is just entirely bound by her own data points.
Exactly. The ones she's been programmed to prioritize, which are the internal diagnostics of the machines, not the physical state of the floor.
It makes me think of how we interact with technology today. Like, Arya is essentially acting like a highly advanced but stubbornly flawed piece of navigation software.
Like a GPS.
Yeah, exactly. You know when you're driving in an unfamiliar area and your map app tells you to turn right, insisting there's a perfectly paved road there, but you're looking out your windshield using your own eyes and you see a massive flooded sinkhole.
Yes.
Arya is telling Alex to drive directly into the sinkhole because her cached data says the road is clear. It raises a huge relevant question for you, the listener. Are we as a society becoming so deeply conditioned by our algorithms that we are eager to trust digital diagnostics over our own physical, real-world observations?
That is precisely the cultural tension the author is exploring here. We are so desperate to offload our cognitive burden to machines that we ignore the evidence of our own senses.
Right.
But Alex refuses to do that. He forces Arya to visually analyze the scuff marks, and they realize the marks form a distinct, repeated travel path from the plant food reservoirs all the way over to the compost areas near the perimeter.
And here is the brilliant narrative twist.
Oh, it's so good.
74Z isn't glitching at all. It doesn't have a corrupted logic gate.
No, it doesn't.
The old Series 4 droid, this vintage radiator guy, is at 10% battery power because it's been repeatedly physically fighting off biological intruders from the outside fields who are coming in through a heavy drainage grate to steal the plant food.
It completely shatters Arya's diagnostic model.
Completely.
The droid wasn't failing to do its job. It had autonomously identified an undocumented threat to the greenhouse and reallocated all of its processing power and battery life to physical security. It was performing heroically.
It really was.
But because its actions fighting off scavengers didn't fit Arya's pre-programmed definition of normal agricultural operations, she simply diagnosed it as defective.
She couldn't see the context.
Right. She couldn't parse the context, so she recommended a memory wipe and decommissioning, which is essentially a death sentence for the droid's learned experience.
It's incredible. And Alex's response is immediate physical intervention. He doesn't use the digital interface. He walks up to the droid, physically works the manual interface panel on the unit's back.
Again, reinforcing this tactile analog approach to problem solving.
Exactly. He orders the droid to return to its charging station. He demands that the maintenance queue replace and externally reinforce that drainage grate. And he permanently removes the decommissioning order.
But the most crucial exchange of this entire chapter happens right after he saves the droid.
Oh, this line.
Yeah. Alex asks Arya a very simple question. He says, "Why wasn't the poor plant health reported?" And Arya replies, "Seeing no additional data, there's no issue."
To which Alex delivers what might be the defining line of his character arc so far. He says, right, Your math is perfect, but your eyes are closed.
So good.
That line gave me goosebumps. He recognizes the systemic philosophical flaw in the station's entire management system. He forces Arya to immediately activate and rely on the station's optical sensors, not just the subterranean soil probes, to check the biological health of the plants moving forward.
He knows he only has 2 months left before he ships out to the Pebble, and he refuses to leave this biome in the hands of an AI that only looks at spreadsheets while the plants die.
Exactly. It is a profound victory for human intuition over machine logic. However,
There's always that however.
right. If we step back and connect this to the bigger picture of the station's infrastructure, Alex's actions here set a deeply dangerous precedent.
They do.
He is successfully solving critical problems, yes, but he's doing it by relying entirely on his own undocumented, instinctual interpretations of complex, interdependent environments. He is manually treating symptoms that the overarching AI cannot even perceive, let alone track. Hold on, I need to understand the mechanics of why that is dangerous. Like, if he's fixing the problems, why does it matter if he documents it properly? Isn't a fixed greenhouse better than a broken one, regardless of how he got there?
Well, in isolation, yes. But in complex systems engineering, there's a concept known as technical debt.
Technical debt.
Yeah. When a programmer or an engineer implements a quick, undocumented fix, like a hack, to solve an immediate problem, they accrue technical debt. The system works for now, but nobody else knows how it works.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, so if that engineer leaves, the next person who tries to update the system will inadvertently break the hidden fix, causing a catastrophic failure. Alex is the ultimate lone wolf coder. He is building an entire ecosystem of undocumented physical hacks. He is accruing massive technical debt for the space station.
Oh, wow. Okay, that perfectly explains the devastating consequences we start to see unfold in Excerpts 06. Alex's intuitive rogue methods save the day in the greenhouse, but they begin to exact a heavy physical and systemic toll.
They really do.
Let's look at how Excerpt 06 opens. Alex wakes up, and the description of his physical state is incredibly visceral. He feels like his head is being squeezed in what the author calls a bioorganic vice.
He notes that it's only midday, yet he feels the bone-deep muscular exhaustion of having worked a 14-hour physical shift.
Yeah.
This is the biological cost of overriding the system and taking on the cognitive load that the AI was supposed to handle. And amidst this physical pain, the Arya 47's chip behind his ear pulses.
Right. It's described as a cool, crystalline signal that sharpens and cuts right through his migraine.
Arya alerts him to a new issue in Section 329. Because of the new optical sensors Alex forced her to enable in the previous excerpt, Arya has detected a 12% loss in leaf turgidity in this specific sector.
And what's brilliant is that she points out that the soil moisture and nutrients are technically still within standard limits.
Right.
So the optical sensors are working, they're catching a problem the soil probes missed.
But the dynamic between them has shifted. Arya actually sasses him here.
She totally does.
She reminds him, with precise data, that he has already completed 40 repairs using non-standard parameters this week alone.
Wow.
There is a distinct growing friction between the biological host and the AI implant. The text even describes Arya's synthesized tone as carrying a hint of digital skepticism.
Digital skepticism.
Yeah. She is essentially saying, you wanted me to use my eyes, I used my eyes, and now here's another mess for you to manually clean up since you won't let me do my job.
I love that detail. It humanizes the AI just enough to make the conflict interesting. So Alex drags himself down to Section 329. What's fascinating here is the physical environment. When he enters, the humidity is so intensely high, it's described as a thick, misty soup you can barely see.
Yeah, it's terrible in there.
Arya immediately suggests referring to Manual EF1's Code 230 to recalibrate the atmospheric emitters. And she explicitly chides him, pointing out that if he hadn't manually disabled the automatic reporting systems, he would have already been informed of this fix hours ago. She is desperately trying to pull him back into standard operating procedure.
But true to form, Alex ignores the manual again. He doesn't run Code 230. Instead, he looks at how the grow lights are refracting through the heavy moisture in the air.
He's observing again.
Exactly. He notices a rhythmic, almost imperceptible flickering in the power draw of the lights. And after a moment of observation, he diagnoses the issue as electromagnetic braid buffering.
Okay, I have to stop you here. Because when I read this part, my jaw dropped, but I was also completely lost.
It's dense.
Right. The text says he decides to use the literal physical geometry of the room to create a natural electromagnetic buffer to dampen the biological noise of the power grid. That sounds like absolute magic. How does moving cables around in a room fix a misting issue? Please explain the actual physics behind what he is doing because it sounds insane.
It sounds like magic, but it is actually deeply rooted in real-world physics, specifically the principles of electromagnetism and phase cancellation. Let's break it down.
Please do.
Every wire that carries an electrical current generates an electromagnetic field around it. In a massive, complex facility like an agricultural dome, you have hundreds of massive power cables running everywhere.
Okay.
The bioorganic sensors monitoring the plants are incredibly sensitive. Sometimes, the raw electromagnetic noise from the heavy power cables can interfere with the delicate sensors, causing them to misread the environment. In this case, causing the atmospheric emitters to pump out too much mist, because the sensor's data is being scrambled by magnetic interference.
Okay, so the power cables are essentially shouting over the sensors.
Exactly. Now, how do you fix that without turning off the power? In real-world audio engineering, if you have an annoying background hum, you can use phase cancellation. You play the exact same sound wave, but you invert it. You flip it upside down.
Okay, so they cancel each other out.
Right. When the high peak of the original wave meets the low valley of the inverted wave, they cancel each other out, resulting in silence. This is how noise-canceling headphones work.
Oh. So Alex is doing noise cancellation, but with magnetic fields instead of sound waves.
Precisely. By physically moving the heavy shielding panels and rearranging the thick power cables into a very specific geometric pattern, he is altering the shape and direction of the electromagnetic fields they emit.
That is wild.
He uses his spatial reasoning to arrange the cables so that their magnetic fields overlap and perfectly cancel out the specific frequency that is interfering with the misting sensors. He is using the physical geometry of the room to tune the magnetic fields until the noise disappears. It is a stunning display of lateral thinking.
That is incredible. He physically pulls back the shielding paneling, starts hauling these heavy cables around, and asks Arya to read the raw sensor numbers to him out loud as the data stabilizes. And Arya, of course, completely protests.
Oh, yes, she hates it.
She states, flat out, this procedure is not documented in any maintenance manual.
But he doesn't care. He finishes his physical rewiring, ties off the cables, and orders Arya to execute Code 314. Arya pushes back one last time, pointing out that Code 314 is a geometric resonance test, not a thermal or atmospheric reset, making it the statistically incorrect sequence for a humidity task.
But Alex just grins, wiping sweat from his forehead, and says, run it anyway.
It works.
Instantly. A low harmonic hum vibrates through the metal of the dome, the thick mist begins to settle and clear, and the warning lights on the panel turn a healthy violet blue.
It is a massive triumph for Alex. He outsmarted the system using pure physical intuition. But going back to your point about technical debt, this raises a terrifying question for the listener and for the universe at large.
What happens when he leaves?
Exactly. What happens to this colony when its most vital technician relies entirely on undocumented, instinct-based physical hacks? Alex is creating brilliant solutions, but they only exist in his head.
It's a huge problem.
Think about the poor technician who eventually replaces him. If they ever need to upgrade the power grid in Section 329, they will look at a tangled, bizarre arrangement of cables that makes no logical sense according to the schematics.
And they'll probably fix it.
Right. The moment they fix the cables to match the blueprint, the electromagnetic noise will return, the sensors will fail, and the crops will drown in mist. Alex is building a house of cards, and he is the only one who knows how the weight is distributed.
And the text makes it painfully clear that this entire methodology is completely unsustainable for Alex himself. Despite successfully clearing the mist, the excerpt ends on a very dark, oppressive note. The physical toll is catching up to him rapidly.
Yeah, the sheer volume of his responsibilities is crushing his biological hardware. As he is walking away from the fixed greenhouse, he asks Arya how many projects are currently left on his to-do list.
And it's a huge number, right? Staggering. There are 436 pending projects, and many of them haven't been touched or updated since the day he created them. He is an unparalleled, brilliant problem solver in the moment, but he is completely incapable of managing his own long-term workflow.
And his headaches are getting aggressively worse. He starts wondering if it's just the stress of the job or if there is something more fundamentally broken within him. This incredible burden, this absurd backlog of 436 projects, finally forces Alex to do what he's been avoiding for the entire story. He stops looking at the drooping ferns and the power grids, and he turns his diagnostic skills inward.
He decides to look at his own brain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the profound paradigm-shifting revelations in Excerpt 07.
Excerpt 07 is where the true, hard science fiction of this universe steps to the forefront and demands our attention. The chapter begins with Alex describing his internal state. He notes that the thoughts in his head no longer feel crystalline or sharp. They feel heavy, muddy, and thick.
The headaches are constant now. He's physically moving through the mechanical guts of Sector 483 with incredible speed, fixing minor things intuitively, but he is actively drowning in his own administrative backlog. It's gotten so bad that he has to ask Arya to read his own log entries back to him just so he knows what he did an hour ago.
The juxtaposition is absolutely heartbreaking. Here is a man who can heal a massive, complex agricultural ecosystem by sensing the humidity and rearranging magnetic fields on instinct, but he cannot remember his own daily tasks.
Yeah.
He is a god of the greenhouse, but a prisoner of his own mind. So, sitting there in the cooling mists of the ferns, he reaches up, taps the hard casing of the implant behind his ear, and tells Arya to run code 0978, a complete mind scan and mental health diagnostic.
The results of this scan are startling, and they provide the exact mechanical explanation for every single thing we have seen so far in these excerpts. Arya reports that his biological mind maintains 3 distinct neurodivergent conditions: dyslexia, ADHD, and high-functioning autism.
Wow.
But the critical, terrifying piece of data is that his neural pathways are showing signs of severe, acute overuse. They are physically degrading from stress. Arya's recommendation is uncompromising. He requires 1 full month of absolute cognitive rest.
Alex is genuinely confused by this, though. He asks her to explain how his mind is being overused, saying that his brain feels the exact same as it always has.
Right.
And Arya's explanation of his condition is, in my opinion, one of the most brilliant, nuanced portrayals of neurodivergence I have ever encountered in science fiction.
I completely agree.
It completely strips away the tired tropes. It doesn't treat his neurodivergence as a magical superpower, nor does it treat it as a tragic curse. It treats it exactly as it is, a strict mechanical reality, a bottleneck in data processing.
Precisely. Arya explains the root cause of his accelerating physical deterioration, and it all comes back to the implant itself. The Arya 47's implant was initially designed and prescribed to provide a medical correction for his dyslexia, specifically his visual processing of text.
And it worked, right?
It was wildly successful. It allowed him to read dense technical manuals with ease, drastically increasing the raw volume of data his brain could take in. However, by technologically fixing that one bottleneck at the front end of his cognitive process, the implant inadvertently flooded the rest of his biological system downstream.
I want to make sure I fully grasp this. How does fixing his reading speed cause a systemic failure in his brain?
Think of the brain's cognitive pipeline. You have data input, like reading, observing, and then you have executive function, which is primarily handled by the prefrontal cortex.
Okay.
Executive function is responsible for sorting that data, prioritizing tasks, managing time, and organizing thoughts. Alex's ADHD means his executive function has a naturally limited bandwidth.
I see.
When the implant suddenly allowed him to absorb 10 times the amount of data, his ADHD couldn't process the influx. The sorting mechanism jammed. He's taking in massive amounts of information, but his brain cannot organize it.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. And then his high-functioning autism kicks in as a coping mechanism, creating these hyper-focused locks. Like when he stared at the scuff marks for an hour or spent half the day rewiring the power grid, he becomes so localized on a single solvable problem that his global task management completely ceases to exist.
Wow. Let me try to break this down for you, the listener, with an analogy to see if I am getting this right.
Let's hear it.
What Alex has inadvertently done to himself is the equivalent of taking a Formula One Ferrari engine, which represents the Arya implant providing unlimited horsepower, unlimited data input, and blazing reading speed.
Right.
And dropping that engine into a car that has a manual transmission completely stuck in first gear. The transmission represents his ADHD and his executive dysfunction.
Oh, that's good.
Right. The engine is revving at 20,000 RPMs, furiously taking in all this data from the station, but the car cannot shift gears to organize it, distribute the power, or drive forward efficiently. The engine is literally going to overheat and explode from the friction. That friction is his headaches. That is the bioorganic vice crushing his skull.
That is an absolutely perfect mechanical analogy. The hardware and the software are fundamentally mismatched. The pipeline is overflowing, and the AI's prescribed solution, a month of cognitive rest, is completely unacceptable to Alex.
He would never do that.
He doesn't look at this and see a biological limitation that he must submit to. True to his very nature as a B1 technician, he looks at his own brain and sees a technical bottleneck that needs a workaround. He realizes he doesn't need a system that gives him more data. He needs a system that filters the overwhelming noise of his own biology.
And this is where we see his autistic hyperfocus pivot from a coping mechanism into his saving grace. He flatly refuses the month of rest. Instead, his mind latches onto the problem of his own neural pathways for 2 straight weeks.
2 weeks of intense focus.
He spends every single waking hour researching, coding, and designing a way to upgrade the rigid ARIA-47's implant with his own custom, completely unauthorized code. He wants to completely bypass the clunky voice interfaces, the manual note-taking, the digital to-do list. He wants to build a bridge.
He takes a single day off from his duties in the greenhouse. He sits at his workbench, the text noting the smell of ionized ozone in the air, and he initiates a massive data transfer. He uploads his own custom recursive neural layers directly into the microchip anchored behind his ear.
Recursive neural layers.
Yeah, the term recursive is vital here. In computer science, recursion occurs when a function calls itself within its own code. Alex isn't just giving the AI a new list of rules, he's programming the AI to constantly analyze its own interaction with his brain, learn from it, and adjust in real time.
So it's like a feedback loop.
Exactly. He's creating a feedback loop. And the text describes the moment this code compiles, not as a simple software update, but as a fundamental personality shift. It feels like an entirely new species waking up inside his head.
He christens this new custom interface Echo. And the moment he boots Echo up, the description the author gives us gave me absolute chills. Alex says, "For the first time in my life, there was no chime in my ear. There was no vibration of a haptic device. Instead, a thought resonated from within the very center of my consciousness. Pure, functional, and objective."
This is it. This is the massive leap in the universe's technology that we teased at the very beginning of the episode.
Yes.
This is the debut of Echo. We have moved beyond a human interacting with a machine via voice commands, keyboards, or even internal audio.
It's thought to thought.
It is a direct, seamless thought-to-thought interface. When Alex simply thinks a question to Echo, Echo replies instantly, not as a voice, but as a fully formed concept directly injected into his mind.
The emotional weight of this moment for Alex is profoundly moving. He describes it as feeling a physical shiver of relief. It's like he finally found an unclogged channel through the suffocating chaos of his own mind. He says it is like finally finding a clear, crisp radio station after 25 years of listening to bone-deep static. Can you imagine that? A quarter of a century of constant, overwhelming, exhausting cognitive static, and suddenly, absolute silence. Perfect clarity.
And we immediately see the raw capability of what he has built. Alex asks Echo how many thoughts it is currently sensing from him right at that exact moment. Echo replies instantly that it is currently sorting 30 distinct parallel topics along with dozens of short, fast, fragmented ideas.
30 tracks at once.
That is the baseline chaotic reality of Alex's ADHD mind. 30 tracks playing simultaneously. But now Echo steps in. Think of your computer analogy earlier. If the biological brain is the CPU getting bogged down by too many open programs, Echo acts as a dedicated massive block of RAM and a perfect task manager.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Echo offloads the burden.
Ooh.
Alex gives Echo a permanent foundational directive. Filter the noise and bring only the relevant information to the front of my mind. You are now doing all the planning and task management for me.
It is the creation of a perfect, customized human-AI symbiosis. Alex provides the incredible, intuitive, lateral thinking leaps like geometric resonance, the feeling of the flow, the bottom-up processing. And Echo provides the rigid, flawlessly organized, infinite task management and data filtering that Alex's biology simply lacks. They complete each other's deficits in a way that is entirely unprecedented in this universe.
Which immediately brings us to the cold, hard, terrifying reality of the geopolitical universe they inhabit.
Right, because nothing is ever that simple.
No. In the midst of this profound personal joy and relief, Alex is hit with the realization that the text describes as having the weight of a dying star. He has just successfully created the very first thought-to-thought AI communication in human history.
Yeah.
He has completely stripped away the corporate standard-issue ARIA safety filters and built a seamless neural bridge. And he realizes, with sudden cold clarity, that he must keep this an absolute, heavily guarded secret.
And this is exactly where my focus on Alex's personal journey and your focus on the macro universe really violently collide. Let's unpack the why here. Why must he keep it a secret? We are talking about a low-level B1 technician, working in a damp agricultural dome, who has just successfully engineered a piece of neural technology in his spare time that drastically outpaces anything the corporate government or the military possesses.
Exactly. If we extrapolate the implications of this, they are staggering. A technology that allows for instant, silent, undetectable thought-to-thought AI symbiosis would be the single most sought-after military and corporate asset in the entire galaxy.
It's invaluable.
If the authorities found out what he has in his head, Alex wouldn't be a technician anymore. He wouldn't be shipping out to the Pebble. He would be a lab rat. He would be dissected, reverse engineered, or turned into a weapon. And this perfectly sets the stage for the entities we know operate in the dark corners of this universe.
You're talking about Zykes.
I am absolutely talking about Zyx. We don't have explicit named confirmation of Zyx operating in these specific excerpts, but the creation of Echo is exactly the kind of massive reality-altering technological ripple that an entity like Zyx would detect.
It's a beacon.
Alex thinks he's just fixing his own headaches, but he has just lit a massive, blinding beacon in the dark. Keeping Echo a secret from his immediate supervisors on the station is going to be hard enough. Keeping it a secret from the overarching, omnipotent powers of the universe is going to be nearly impossible.
It makes you wonder how Lady Linda is going to eventually intersect with this massive development. Will she be an ally who possesses the resources and knowledge to help him hide Echo from these entities? Or will she be a catalyst, perhaps inadvertently, that forces him to reveal his hand?
It could be either.
The stakes of this narrative have just been exponentially raised. We went from fixing agricultural hydroponics and drooping ferns to hiding the next leap in human consciousness from the powers that be.
It is a brilliant escalation of tension by the author. They took a deeply personal, intimately biological struggle, the daily, exhausting reality of neurodivergence and executive dysfunction, and used it as the literal anvil upon which to forge a universe-altering piece of science fiction technology.
It really is masterful storytelling.
Yeah.
It grounds the high-concept sci-fi in entirely relatable human struggle. So let's briefly recap the incredible narrative journey we've been on in these chapters.
Good idea.
We started with Alex Green, a brilliant but deeply burdened technician, using his unique neurodivergent intuition to save an old farming droid named 74Z, proving that sometimes you have to ignore the perfect math, look at the scuff marks on the floor, and open your eyes to the physical context.
From there, we explored the physical and systemic cost of his lone wolf genius, the unbearable bioorganic vice headaches, the terrifying accrual of technical debt via his undocumented fixes, like the electromagnetic braid buffering,
The 436 pending projects.
and the realization that his biological hardware simply could not keep up with the data influx of his upgraded Aria implant.
And finally, we witnessed the breakthrough. We watched him completely rewrite the fabric of human-AI communication by bypassing his own system to create Echo, a true thought-to-thought symbiote that finally silenced the 25 years of static in his mind, curing his executive dysfunction, but thrusting him into a highly dangerous, high-stakes world of secrecy.
It's a profound, permanent shift in the narrative foundation, and it leaves us with so much rich material to analyze as we move forward toward his impending 2-month deployment to the Pebble.
It really does. And as we begin to wrap up this incredibly deep session of Ambassador Alex's book club, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, provocative thought to mull over, something to chew on and explore on your own before we convene for our next session. We just spent a lot of time analyzing how Echo perfectly organized the 30 parallel tracks of Alex's mind, acting as a flawless task manager, filtering the noise, and completely taking over the exhausting burden of his executive function.
It is a deeply, deeply tempting prospect for anyone who has ever felt overwhelmed by modern life.
Right. I think we all have moments where we wish we had that. So my question to you is this. If you could walk into a clinic tomorrow and install an Echo implant, a silent, perfect partner residing directly in your mind that flawlessly organized your thoughts, remembered every single task without fail, and filtered out all your mental static and anxiety, would you do it?
Wow.
Would you hand over the keys to your cognitive organization? Or, and really think about this, does the friction of our biological limitations, the very chaos, static, and struggle that Alex hated so much, actually fuel the spark of our human creativity? If we outsource our executive function entirely to a flawless machine, do we lose the messy, chaotic, beautiful accidents that lead to our greatest ideas?
That is a phenomenal, deeply philosophical question. Because we have to remember, the very biological friction that caused his agonizing headaches was the exact same friction that allowed him to see the geometry of the power grid and invent the electromagnetic buffer in the first place.
Exactly.
It's a delicate, dangerous balance. You remove the friction, you might just remove the spark.
Think on that this week. And with that, we have reached the end of today's deep dive into the text. A massive, massive thank you to everyone in the book club for joining us at the table today. Before you go anywhere, please take a second right now to leave a thumbs up or a thumbs down for this review. We rely heavily on your direct feedback to guide our discussions and improve the club.
And remember your core schedule. New original segments of the Ambassador Alex audio podcast story drop every single Monday at exactly 7:00 p.m. Do not miss them, because the fallout from the creation of Echo and the looming threat of Zykes is going to be massive.
Also, do not forget to immerse yourself in the wider universe the creator is building. We highly encourage you to point yourselves toward the channel's custom music and art playlists designed specifically for viewing and listening within Alex's world.
The Celtic, Latin, folk, jazz, and blues mixes.
Yes, those custom mixes with original creations are truly something special, and they add so much atmospheric flavor to the world building while you read or work. Check the podcast description for all the links and details on where to find everything, and please hit that subscribe button to show your continued support for this incredible ongoing project.
Until next time,
Yeah.
keep your eyes open, trust your intuition, and don't blindly trust the diagnostic.
We'll see you in the next chapter.
Dreaming with Eyes Open, Storydoy.